My name is Marin Eliza Cole, 33 years old. The host wrapped a cheap green wristband around my arm, like I was sneaking into a music festival, not walking into a birthday dinner I never asked for. It read limited guest, in block letters that made my skin look paler than I felt. Back room, he said, smiling the way staff smile at problems they didn't create. The restaurant was warm gold and glass, polished cutlery, soft jazz, the kind of napkins that pretend linen is a personality. My family had chosen a place that photographs well. Of course they had. They were already there when I arrived. Dad's half laugh, rising above the table, Melanie angled for a flattering camera roll, David narrating nothing with too much confidence, Mom taking small sips and bigger looks. They cheered like I'd won something. No one stood. I kissed cheeks. I sat. Mom leaned close, her perfume something powdery and stubborn. That wristband means no entree, she whispered, eyes on her glass. Just drinks. We couldn't afford full meals for everyone. I looked at the green paper like it had a pulse. So, it's a cover charge. She smiled like we were sharing a joke. Cocktails are more your vibe anyway. Across the table, Melanie said, "We had to put you on a budget." In that voice, the internet calls playful and women call a warning. David laughed. A fraction too loud. No one said happy birthday. No one asked about the release I'd just shipped, the client I'd saved, the week I'd crawled through to get here. I work in IT. Unglamorous, but sturdy. My money doesn't glitter in photos. It just arrives when the world cracks. I looked at their plates. Heirloom tomatoes slick with oil. A board of meats and cheeses posed like a magazine shoot. Bread I wasn't invited to tear. Limited guest meant watch us eat. I lifted my water and toasted myself. 2:33. Evan had texted at 5. Dinner after? I'll wait up. And I had texted back a thumbs up because there are only so many bridges you can hold with both hands. He is good. His ex, Tessa, used to say I was too generous. I think she meant naive. The band bit my wrist when I stood. Bathroom, I lied to no one. At the bar, the light was cooler, truer. I set my green paper on the counter and told the bartender I'd like to move my tab to the table in the back. I said the name. He nodded. Then I asked for their most expensive bottle of red. It's $400, he said gently, the way you ask if someone's certain about the edge they're speeding toward. Perfect. I carried the first glass back myself. I took the seat I'd had and sipped slow, cherry and graphite and the kind of silence you buy when you finally stop begging to be seen. I listened to my family perform us. The stories smoothed at the edges, the complaints couched as favors. The restaurant hummed. My pulse didn't. Half an hour later, a server slid the leather folder onto the table the way you lay news on a doorstep. David grabbed it, like always. He scanned, blinked, then shouted loud enough to turn heads. Who ordered the $400 wine? Melanie's mouth dropped open. Mom's eyes went shiny with performative hurt. Dad squinted at the line item like numbers could be negotiated by force of will. I drained the last inch in my glass, set it down, and stood. Thanks for the drinks. Marin, Mom reached for my wristband. I slipped my hand away. I walked out past the host, past the bar, past the chandelier that reflected people who knew how to be family to other people at other tables. Outside, the air was a clean slap. My car started on the first try. I didn't go home. I drove the loops the city draws when it's trying to help you think. Up through Clarksville, where the live oaks keep their own counsel. Down along the river, where the lights sketch the water into something calmer than it is. I counted the times I said yes when no should have been a boundary, not a failure. Dad's brakes, $1,100, because he didn't trust the shop. Mom's meds, $200, because the generic makes me feel off. 2 years of groceries I ordered every Thursday night from my couch so they wouldn't have to look at a total in public. Melanie's $4,000 loan that became a $1,000 monthly stipend because jobs are rigged. David with his 6-year-old at my door. Lights cut, cheeks flushed, shame disguised as urgency. If love is a ledger, our columns weren't balanced. I had let them overdraft me emotionally until my balance of mercy was negative. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Evan, all good? Then I can come get you. I wrote, all good, need air. He sent a heart. I tucked it in the pocket of my coat and took another loop. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the porch light had come on by itself, like houses do when they're trying to be kind. Inside, my living room smelled like clean wood. I put my keys in the bowl and listened to the quiet that belongs only to people who pay their own bills. When the knock came, 2 days later, it was the kind you answer even if you know better. Hard, fast, impatient. I opened the door and there they were. Mom, Dad, Melanie, David, in a tight line like a choir that doesn't know the song. "You think you're funny?" David snapped, stepping forward. "Ordering a $400 bottle like you're teaching us a lesson?" Dad's jaw worked. "You dumped a $900 bill on us." Melanie rolled her eyes and pushed past me like it was still her right. She perched on the arm of my couch. "Dramatic, even for you," she said, crossing her arms. "Vindictive." I shut the door because my neighbors didn't need the show. Mom stood small and quiet until the script reached her, then said, "You humiliated us. We planned that dinner for you." Plan. The word almost made me laugh. Paper bands for me, full menus for them. I let the noise run until it ran out. Then I asked, very softly, "Why do you all think I owe you anything?" They blinked like people dragged from a dream. I named numbers like dates, Dad's breaks, Mom's meds, pandemic groceries, Melanie's $4,000 that turned into 1,000 a month, David's shut-off notice with a child's damp face behind him. No one denied it. They shuffled in place like someone had turned on brighter light. "I'm not paying the $900, I said. "I'm not paying the next thing, or the next. I'm done." "So you're cutting us off?" Melanie's voice sharpened. "After everything? You mean everything I've done while you called it love?" Dad muttered, "Money changed you." Mom said, "This is cold." David said, "You'll regret it." I opened the door and waited, because sometimes the only thing you can offer people is a clear exit. One by one, they filed out into the afternoon heat, not looking back. When the door clicked shut, the silence was a clean room. It felt like someone had removed something toxic you had learned to pretend wasn't killing you. That evening, the text started like a weather pattern they'd named after me. Mom, family means sacrifice. Melanie, 3 in a row. Don't forget where you came from. You're not better than us. You're just lucky. David, real mature. On Thursday, Dad, roof's in bad shape. Inspector says next storm will do it. Need $4,500. Can you help? I stared at the screen until the words turned into gray shapes. Then I deleted the message, not out of anger, out of oxygen. The quiet that followed wasn't peace, not yet, but it was the first space I'd had in years where I could hear my own life. The knock the second time was faster, meaner, like someone pounding on a vending machine they thought owed them a soda. I'd barely finished my coffee. The cup was still warm in my hands when I opened the door and my family poured in without asking, a storm front in human clothes. David didn't bother with hello. "You think you're funny?" he snapped, shouldering past me. "Ordering a $400 bottle so we choke on the bill?" Dad's jaw was already set, his voice falsely calm. "You left a $900 tab, Marin." "Good morning," I said, stepping aside because saying no at the threshold felt like a fight I didn't need to bleed for. They staged themselves in my living room like a courtroom sketch. Melanie took the arm of the sofa, regal, condemning. Mom hovered, fingers twisting the strap of her purse, quiet until it served her. "You embarrassed us," Melanie said, crossing her legs. "There were people we know there." "You invited me to a dinner where my wristband said limited guest," I answered. "We can start there." Mom flinched. "We were trying to do something nice. It's not our fault you make everything about money." I set my cup on the console and folded my hands to keep them from shaking with either amusement or fury. Hard to tell. "You want to talk about money?" "Don't," Dad warned, as if the word had teeth. "Let's," I said, and reached for the folder I'd left on the side table because part of me knew we'd land here. It wasn't thick. It didn't need to be. 6 weeks ago, Dad's breaks, $100. February, Mom's medication, $200. Pandemic groceries, 24 months running, every Thursday without fail, all from my card. Melanie, $4,000 when you lost your job, plus $1,000 a month since then. David, with your son in tow when the lights were shut off, what was that? $326? I put it on my card at midnight so he wouldn't sleep in the dark. No one was loud now. The air changed when numbers replaced feelings. David looked at the floor. Dad pretended to study the family photo on my shelf as if it were incriminating. Melanie rolled her lips inward the way she did when she couldn't find a prettier version of herself to stand in front of the truth. I closed the folder. I am not paying the $900 dinner. I'm not paying the next emergency or the one after that. I'm done being your emergency fund. So you're cutting us off, Melanie hissed. After everything? Everything I have given, I said softly, while you call it love. Dad scoffed. Money's changed you. It stopped being a sedative, I said. That's all. Mom finally found her place. You're cold, Marin. You used to be warm. You used to say yes. I used to keep you alive with my yes, I replied. Now I'm trying to keep myself alive with a no. David's mouth curled. You'll regret this. I opened the door again because some speeches only end when air is cooler on someone's face. You can leave now. They did, one by one, in a silent line, like mourners at a funeral, where the body refuses to be dead. The door clicked. The house inhaled. I picked up my coffee again and let the quiet gather like courage. Evan texted, "Want me to come over?" I typed, "I'm okay. I need to do a few things." He sent back, "Proud of you." I put the phone face down and walked to my desk. The tabs were already open. Bank, phone carrier, grocery delivery, utilities. It took less than an hour to unwind a web I'd woven over 5 years. Auto payment to Melanie, canceled. Grocery delivery profile linked to my parents' address, removed. Family phone plan I'd been shouldering because bundling saves money. Ported numbers, account closed. The pharmacist's auto refill tethered to my card, transferred to Mom's account with a note to the tech. A P.O. box rental form, half filled, sat in another tab. I completed it, scheduled a mail forward, indexed an emptiness I could live with. By afternoon, the texts arrived in waves. Mom, family means sacrifice. You're losing yourself. Melanie, don't forget where you came from. You're not better than us. You're just lucky, David, real mature. At dusk, my phone lit up again. Dad, roof's in bad shape. Inspector says next storm will take it. Need $4,500. Can you help? I stared at the thread until the words lost meaning. Then I deleted the message. Not even a scene. There are edges you learn by slicing your own palm on them. The next few days did not feel like peace. They felt like detox. In the morning, I'd wake and wait for the panic. Who needs me? What now? And it wouldn't come. I would stand in the middle of my kitchen and listen to the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of someone walking their dog, and feel both like I had wandered into someone else's life and like I'd finally returned to my own. I worked. The code behaved as if it had been waiting for me to choose myself. I ate things I cooked instead of things I ordered. I slept through the hour I used to reserve for second guessing. When my phone did buzz, it was Evan sending a photo of a sunset he thought I'd like, or a client saying thanks, or nothing at all. A week passed. The quiet taught me a new condition. I didn't owe anyone the kind of exhaustion I could not recover from. Then the silence changed its weight. The group thread stopped its little theater of guilt. Even David, who could weaponize a meme like a middle schooler with a grudge, fell still. I knew what that meant. They were not done. They were regrouping. On Wednesday, a letter appeared in my mailbox, thick enough to make the metal groan when I slid it out. No stamp. Hand-delivered. My name in my mother's tight cursive, the kind that looked like it was written with teeth. I took it to the kitchen and read it standing up, like a person reading a weather alert for a storm that had already blown out the power. We love you, Marin. We don't understand what happened. You used to be so generous. You've changed. It flowed like a river you drown in because you were polite enough to try not to splash. We were trying to have a nice dinner for you. We didn't think you'd react that way. Is this really worth throwing everything away? Halfway down, the tone shifted. I know about the property in Wimberley. The words didn't shout. They didn't need to. A cold line slid through my chest. I hadn't told anyone. Not Rachel. Not Evan. The deal wasn't even finalized. Only a survey flag on a map and a recurring daydream. A small cabin, a quiet hill, morning light that didn't ask me to justify it. We always believed in sharing in this family. It's what we do. You have something that could save all of us, and you're keeping it for yourself. A cabin while your father's roof is falling in, while Melanie is drowning in expenses. The handwriting steadied. True north toward an old threat. If you still care about this family, you'll do the right thing. Sell the land. Help us. This doesn't have to be the end. It wasn't a letter, it was notice. They weren't just coming for my present anymore. They were coming for a future they hadn't even paid admission to imagine. I folded the paper, walked out to the patio, lit the fire pit with a long match, and dropped the letter in. The flames took their time, licking each line black, then gone. The ash lifted like speech that had finally learned to keep itself to itself. I didn't know how they knew. Maybe someone mentioned something. Maybe someone had looked when they shouldn't have. The how didn't matter, only the no did. Before sunrise the next morning, I drove south, past the city where the sky opens, past billboards selling future selves I wasn't going to buy. The Wimberley lot was mostly cedar and rock and the hum of insects, but it felt like a door that would open if I asked kindly. The survey flag shivered in a small breeze. I stood in the dust and let the quiet do its work. This place didn't care about ledgers or wristbands or who believed what expensive wine meant. It cared that I showed up ready to build something that didn't ask me to bleed to prove it loved me. I made 2 calls. First, to the builder. I want to move the timeline up, I said. Pour the slab as soon as you can. Frame next. Second, to my lawyer. Everything from now on goes into my name only, I said. Tighter than tight. If there's a way to make it invisible, do it. She didn't ask why. She didn't tell me to be careful. She said the only thing a person who knows you've finally chosen yourself can say, on it. On the way back to Austin, I rolled down the windows. The wind pulled my hair into a new shape. When my phone buzzed, I didn't look. I had somewhere to be, not with anyone else, with the part of me that had just learned how to say mine without apology and mean life by it. The morning after I burned my mother's letter, the smell of smoke still clung to the patio. It followed me inside, faint, sharp, a reminder that some fires don't stay outdoors. I didn't open the curtains. The light felt too honest. At 9, my phone buzzed. Evan. Did something happen? You sound off. Me. Just family stuff. Nothing I can't handle. Evan. You never have to handle everything alone. I stared at the message until it blurred. He meant well, but this wasn't a weight anyone else could carry. You can't outsource history. By noon, I was on the road to Wimberley. I hadn't planned it. I just started driving, the letter's ashes still sitting cold in the pit behind me. The highway unwound in long gray ribbons, the kind that hypnotize you into thinking maybe escape is a destination. When I reached the turnoff to my property, the world went quiet. The wind shifted, the air smelled of cedar and dust. The lot was still raw. Red earth, a scatter of limestone, a rough wooden stake with fluorescent tape marking the future corner of the cabin. But it was mine, every inch of it. I walked until my boots sank slightly into the soil. No one yelling. No text demanding money. No guilt wrapped in affection. Just space. This, I thought, this is what peace costs. The sun was already burning low, slanting through the trees. I called my builder. Let's move up the timeline, I said. Pour the slab next week. He hesitated. That's early. Are you sure? Yes. Then I called Mara, my attorney. The property. Tighten everything. Put it under my trust name. Seal the deed. I don't want anyone sniffing around. She didn't ask questions, just said, consider it locked. When I hung up, I realized my hands were steady for the first time in weeks. The drive back to Austin was slower. My mind replayed the letter line by line, wondering how they found out. Maybe Melanie saw an email during one of her visits. Maybe David snooped through my office when he borrowed my printer. Maybe Rachel told them accidentally. Or maybe they'd just guessed, because control is an instinct, not a coincidence. Either way, they'd crossed into my last private place. When I got home, a voicemail was waiting from Mom. Marin, please don't do anything drastic. We're just worried. You don't know what people might think if they find out you're hiding assets. You don't want that kind of trouble, sweetheart. It wasn't fear in her voice. It was warning dressed as concern. I deleted it. Then, almost on cue, another text arrived. This one from Melanie. Hey, I know things have been tense, but we should talk. One dinner. Everyone wants to clear the air. No drama, I promise. No drama. That phrase landed like an inside joke I wasn't in on anymore. I should have ignored it. I even typed no thanks and deleted it. But curiosity is its own form of poison. I needed to see it, the moment they realized I'd closed the vault for good. We met at a small Italian place on the east side. Warm lighting, soft piano, walls covered in photos of Rome that looked older than my parents' marriage. When I arrived, only Rachel was there, sitting straight-backed, eyes nervous but kind. Hi, she said, half a smile. Hey, I answered. We didn't hug. The rest trickled in after. Mom, Dad, David. Melanie came last, late enough to make an entrance, dressed like she was auditioning for sympathy. At first it was civil, too civil. We ordered, talked about the weather, traffic, Netflix. My father complimented the breadsticks like they'd solve something. But I could feel it building. That static under the skin, the waiting for someone to strike the match. Dad was the one who did. He set down his fork like it was a gavel. We've all talked. We're worried about you. I didn't look up. About me or about what I'm not giving you? He ignored the question. You've changed. Mom sighed. You're cold now. Hard. That's not who you used to be. Melanie leaned forward, all righteous poise. You're acting like we're enemies, like we don't matter. You've got money now, and it's made you selfish. David added the echo. Yeah, money doesn't make you better than us. I set down my knife and fork. You're right, I said quietly. It doesn't, but it does make boundaries possible. They blinked. That wasn't the script they'd written. I looked at each of them in turn. I have changed, because I finally understood the truth. Silence, then Dad's scoff. Oh, please, enlighten us. I was the one who fixed everything, I said. You took and called it family. The second I stopped bleeding for you, suddenly I'm the villain. You didn't come here to talk. You came here to get control back, but that's gone. Mom opened her mouth, but I kept going. I gave you years of yes, years of rent, repairs, bills, excuses. You called it love, but love doesn't come with receipts. I'm done. The table went still. Melanie's eyes were wet, but not from guilt, just frustration. So this is it? You're cutting us off forever? Yes, I said, because I finally realized something. You don't hate me. You hate that you can't use me anymore. Dad leaned back, jaw tight. Mom's eyes darted to Rachel like maybe she'd rescue the scene. Rachel just stared at her plate. I stood. You had your chance. I gave everything I could. And all it ever got me was debt and disappointment. I dropped a 20 on the table. That should cover my part. Then I left. No shouting, no scene. Just the clatter of silverware behind me and the faint hiss of the door closing. When I got home, the air felt different. Heavier but cleaner, like a storm had rolled through and scrubbed the house bare. No text came that night. No voicemails the next morning. Not even from Rachel. The silence this time wasn't an attack. It was acceptance. Or maybe retreat. Either way, it was quiet. 2 weeks passed. Then a new message lit up my screen. Rachel, hey, I know things blew up. I'm not getting into it, but I could really use a little help this month. Just $300. Please. I sat on the porch with my phone in my lap for a long time. Rachel had always been the soft one, the buffer between me and their chaos. She never asked unless she was desperate, but I couldn't do it. Not again. I typed, I'm sorry, Rach. I can't keep being everyone's safety net. I have to take care of myself now. A minute later, her reply came. Okay, I get it. No guilt, no manipulation. Just a quiet acceptance that hurt more than any of the others. I didn't block her. I couldn't. But that text, that single, resigned okay, felt like the last string snapping between me and the life I'd outgrown. The next morning, I drove back to Wimberley. The builders had started clearing brush for the cabin. Piles of cedar limbs smoked faintly in the sun. I parked, stepped out, and stood in the half-finished silence. The air smelled like sawdust and possibility. For the first time, I didn't think about who might call next or what excuse they'd invent. I just breathed. The land didn't want anything from me. It didn't ask, it didn't guilt, it didn't take. It simply waited. And I realized I'd been waiting too, not for them to change, but for me to stop hoping they would. 5 months passed before they tried again. 5 months of silence. 5 months where my phone was just a phone, not a siren. I'd gotten used to the stillness. I'd built a rhythm. Coffee on the porch at sunrise, work from home till 4, drives to Wimberley on weekends to watch the cabin rise from the ground like a promise. The world was finally steady, predictable, quiet. Then the text arrived. Melanie, let's just talk. One dinner. Everyone wants to clear the air. No drama this time, I promise. I almost laughed. No drama was my family's favorite lie. But part of me, stupid, curious, still human, wanted to see what they looked like now that they couldn't reach my wallet. So I agreed. The restaurant was small, a family-run Italian place tucked behind a strip mall. Warm lighting, tables packed close, that faint smell of garlic and nostalgia clinging to the air. Rachel was already there when I walked in. She gave me a quick, careful smile. Hey, I said. We didn't hug. The others arrived one by one. Mom and Dad together, David trailing behind them, Melanie last as always. Perfect hair, practiced smile, late enough to make it seem intentional. The hostess barely had time to hand us menus before the performance began. For the first 15 minutes, we played the part of people who liked each other, talked about weather, traffic, new road construction on I-35. Melanie made a joke about how you can't escape Austin's rent unless you buy land out in Wimberley. And my stomach clenched. She smiled sweetly, like she hadn't just proven that they knew everything. I didn't rise to it. I poured water, broke a piece of bread, pretended we were strangers who'd accidentally shared a table. Then Dad set down his fork with that heavy deliberation that always meant speech incoming. "We've all talked," he began, "and we're worried about you." There it was, the ambush hidden under a meal. I didn't look up. "About what?" "You've changed," Mom said softly. "You're cold. That's not who you used to be." Melanie leaned forward. "You act like we're enemies, like family means nothing to you anymore." David added, "You're selfish now. You think you're better than us just because you're doing well." The word selfish hung in the air like smoke. I set my glass down slowly. "You're right," I said. "I have changed." They blinked, caught off guard. "I had to," I continued, voice steady, "because I finally understood the truth." Dad scoffed. "And what truth is that?" "That I was the only one giving," I said. "That every emergency was just a test to see how much more I'd give before I broke. You call it generosity when it's convenient and greed when it stops. I was never family to you. I was a safety net." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "We're just trying to help you see reason." "No, you're trying to get back control," I said quietly. "You didn't invite me here to reconnect. You came to see if you could guilt me into opening the door again." Melanie's jaw tightened. "That's not fair." "What's not fair," I said, "is spending years treating me like an open wallet and then calling me cruel when I finally close it." Silence. Even the restaurant noise seemed to dim. Rachel looked down, twisting her napkin. I caught her glance for half a second, a flicker of understanding she'd never say aloud. Dad leaned back, exhaling through his nose. "Money's made you arrogant, Marin." "No," I said softly. "It made me aware." I stood up, pulled a 20 from my purse, and dropped it beside my plate. "That should cover my part," I said. Mom reached for my wrist. "You don't have to go." "Yes, I do." I looked around the table one last time. "You had your chance. I gave you everything I could. Time, money, forgiveness. And all you gave me was a reason to stop." Then I turned and walked out. No one followed. No footsteps, no calls after me. Just the sound of a fork clattering onto a plate as the door closed behind me. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I stood on the curb for a moment, breathing it in, realizing that for the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt done. On the drive home, I didn't replay the dinner or imagine what they said after I left. I didn't need to. I already knew their lines. When I got home, the house was dark. I made tea, sat on the couch, and watched the steam curl up in small spirals that vanished before they reached the light. My phone stayed silent. No apologies, no explanations, no follow-ups. And for once, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like closure. 3 days later, a letter arrived. Not handwritten this time, just typed, folded neatly in an envelope. I didn't have to open it to know it was from them. I placed it on the counter, next to the lighter I'd used on the last one. Then I went outside, poured gas into the lawnmower, and started cutting the grass. When I came back in, the letter was still there, untouched. The world hadn't ended without reading it. I picked it up, walked to the fire pit, and dropped it in. This time I didn't even watch it burn. A week passed, then another. The quiet held. No new messages, no voicemails, no guilt-tripped memes about forgiving family. Even Rachel stopped texting. It was like they'd all agreed on a new strategy, erase me completely. At first, it stung. That old reflex, the one that believed love meant staying reachable, flared up, but it faded quickly. Because for once, the absence didn't feel like loss. It felt like space. Space to breathe, to rebuild, to exist without being pulled apart. Evan came over one evening with takeout and a bottle of wine. "How'd the dinner go?" he asked. "It ended," I said simply. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Good." We didn't talk about it again. That night, as he left, he kissed my forehead and whispered, "You finally stopped rescuing people who won't swim." When the door closed behind him, I realized how true that was, and how light it felt. 5 months have passed since that dinner, since I stood up, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked out of their lives. No shouting match in the parking lot, no last-minute apology, no clever text the next day. Just a clean exit, the kind I never thought I'd be brave enough to make. Since then, not one of them has called. No voicemails from Mom dripping with guilt. No sarcastic messages from David. No, let's talk emails from Melanie. Not even a meme forwarded from Dad pretending everything's fine. It's like they held a silent meeting and decided I no longer existed. Maybe they thought if they ignored me long enough, I'd crawl back. Maybe they thought the guilt would rot me from the inside. But it didn't. The silence turned out to be peace wearing its work clothes. For years, my phone had been a hotline for their chaos. Every overdraft, every just one favor, every broken car or bounced bill. I was their emergency fund disguised as a daughter. Now it barely rings. And when it does, it's for things that belong to me. Work, friends, Evan sometimes. I still get messages from Rachel, though. Not often, but enough to keep the memory of that old life flickering faintly. Always the same shape, always the same tone. Hey, I could really use some help this month. Nothing big? $300 maybe? Or, I wouldn't ask if it weren't important, please. She never says what it's for. Never uses the words rent or bills. She keeps it vague, like if she doesn't name it, it won't feel like a request. I never respond. I can't. Sometimes I stare at the messages for a long time before deleting them. Not because I'm tempted, but because I want to remember how far I've come. I could block her. I probably should, but I don't. Her messages remind me who I used to be, the woman who thought saving everyone else was a form of love, even if it meant drowning herself. That woman's gone. And in her place is someone who finally understands that giving too much isn't kindness. It's self-erasure dressed up as virtue. The cabin's almost finished now. I drive out to Wimberley every weekend to watch it take shape. The smell of fresh wood, the echo of hammer strikes, the slow miracle of structure. It's therapy in motion. Each week, the land looks less like a project and more like a life I haven't quite let myself believe in yet. The builders call me ma'am and ask small, careful questions. Where I want the windows, which direction the balcony should face, how far to extend the porch. Every answer feels like a decision to stay free. Sometimes I stand on the new deck, unfinished boards under my boots, sky wide and unbothered, and imagine mornings here, coffee in hand, no phone buzzing, no guilt breathing down my neck. Just quiet. Evan came out once, a month ago. He walked the property, hands in his pockets, eyes soft with admiration. It's beautiful, he said. I can see why you needed this. I didn't need it, I said. I built it. He smiled at that. The small, proud kind of smile that doesn't ask for credit. He stayed until sunset. Then, before he left, he said, "You finally found a place that doesn't take from you." I nodded. For once. We didn't label what we were, and we didn't need to. Some connections don't come to fill a void. They just stand beside you while you learn what it means to stop emptying yourself. Back in Austin, the paperwork's done. The cabin deed is sealed under my trust. Untraceable, untouchable. No breadcrumbs, no forwarding address, no trail. If my family ever goes looking, they'll find nothing. Not because I'm hiding, but because I finally have something they can't reach. Something they didn't build, so they can't claim. That realization doesn't make me sad, it makes me steady. They don't hate me. They just hate that they can't use me. That's what all this was ever about. Not love, but access. They wanted my presence when it paid their bills, not when it cost them accountability. The day I stopped being useful was the day I stopped being family. And yes, that still stings, even now. Not because I miss them, but because I spent so many years believing love and obligation were the same thing. They're not. Love builds, obligation drains. I was raised to confuse the two. I'm unlearning it one sunrise at a time. It's early morning now. The cabin's almost done. The air smells like sawdust and rain. I sit on the porch with a mug of coffee and listen. Really listen. The wind through the trees, the hum of insects, my own breath, steady and unhurried. For so long, silence meant waiting for the next explosion. Now it means safety. I don't check my phone hoping someone called. I don't brace for a knock on the door. I don't wonder if they've changed because I finally understand they won't. The people who tried to drain me have to live with the quiet I left behind. The same quiet I used to fear. The same quiet I've made my home. Sometimes, when the sun rises over the trees, I think about that dinner, the green wristband biting my skin, the $400 wine, my family's faces, when they realized they couldn't script me anymore. That was the night I stopped performing generosity and started practicing freedom. And this air, this house, this peace, is what freedom sounds like. Not silence, not loneliness, just life, finally mine, echoing in every room.